As the country increases its vaccination drive, there are concerns that misinformation is one of the leading factors that contributes to vaccine hesitancy. There's also some mistrust around the efficacy of the vaccines. Dr. Katleho Mutodi from the Board of Healthcare Funders joins us now to talk about this. Dr. Mutodi, good evening and thank you very much for your time tonight on In Focus.
Good evening, Tabo. Thanks for having us.
I spoke to the South African Medical Association earlier on this week. I also spoke to the Acting Minister of Health earlier on this week around this particular question of vaccine hesitancy. There are some who believe, Dr. Mutudi, that there is no transparency as far as government is concerned, right? For example, around the adverse reaction to vaccines. That is fueling part of what we are seeing as vaccine hesitancy. So there's no clear report as to these are the 20 cases, what has actually happened to them, give us the details. We just hear that these people took vaccines, they may have or not had COVID before, or they may have had some other issues that led to them passing on. And how do you deal with that issue of transparency without spooking everyone and getting everyone all alarmed?
That's true. I think that the challenge, Tabo, is that we're still in unknown territory as far as COVID is concerned. If you think that we just under 2 years now since we have had this, data is still coming in. It's unlike for well-established diseases and well-established therapies. There is data that is still published. I mean, we're learning almost on a daily basis. So I wouldn't say that there isn't transparency. Whatever data comes in is published. There's another phenomenon, that has happened. COVID has garnered a lot of interest from many quarters, and there is a lot of information. I mean, if you look at other diseases that have been with us for years, for decades, there's very little that an ordinary person or average person on the street would know. I was having a chat with someone earlier that if you were to ask somebody what the prevalence of hypertension is in South Africa, there are very few people who can articulate that answer. But when it comes to COVID stats, almost on a daily basis, people can recite them backwards. So there is a lot of fear, and also because the disease process is quite fast. And it is thus fueling the anxiety. And with that, there will be a lot of negative sentiments. Yeah. And this is also not new. 30 years ago, it was the HIV story. The same questions were, where does it come from? Is it lab manufactured? The treatment that was available, we don't know what the treatment is going to be like in 20 years. So there is anxiety, it's understandable. And I think entities like NICD, the department, etc., are also distributing information as quickly as they get it as well.
Yeah. Is it something to be concerned about, the fact that, for example, the MRNA technology is something that the companies have been working on at least, I think, for a decade now, others are saying, and there are some known philanthropists like Bill Gates who have been funding those kinds of research, and people are saying, well, of course, they have been funding this, and ultimately they've got to make money out of it, and therefore this is their virus that they've released out there in order for them to then inject these things into our bodies.
Yeah, there will always be conspiracy theories. I think what my approach has always been that let's look at the reality. There is a disease. It is there. We know what it does to the human body. We know the outcomes. And there are developments in terms of how to attack it. The information that we get has to be, or that we spread, has to be scientific. We cannot also engage in rumor mongering because that will not take us anywhere. And I made an example, again, I'll repeat it with HIV. It took us a long time to accept that it is a disease that needs to be dealt with. And right now, we still, to some extent, are still dealing with the stigma, but there is some acceptance. So COVID came to us in a hurry. We're still struggling with the real issues around it, but there is concrete data that is emerging. There's a lot of work that entities like NICD and the CDC Africa and Global are doing to further research. The issue of the mRNA, a lot of work has been done for more than a decade. And I think that also addresses a concern that people are saying that we are accepting new technology fairly quickly. And why do we appear to be not too suspicious of the development? There's a number of things that have happened. COVID is a pandemic, and I think it's only since the early 1900s where we had a pandemic of this nature. So there is seriousness and urgency to deal with it. The second thing is that there has been better collaboration. You've had of competing companies sharing data. You've seen regulators like SAPRA throughout the world exchanging information more freely, and that led to the faster development of new technology. And of course, we are no longer in 1900. There is new technology, and we are able to assess that at a faster rate.
Right. Let's talk then about the impact of the vaccines themselves. I mean, I have some anti-vaxxers around my circles. I'm not even quite sure what to say to them. They say, no, this thing is going to affect your immune system. I mean, how true is that?
So maybe let's take a step back and say, how do vaccines work? And I think it's also important to say that vaccination has been successful in eliminating some diseases. Some people don't even know what smallpox is. Some people have never seen somebody with polio. But these were challenges about 50, 60 years ago. Now, vaccines are derived through certain technologies where they can take the organism, be it a virus, a bacterium, and they can either kill that organism and then introduce it in the body. Now, the body would recognize it as foreign. And that's where the immune system comes in. It is supposed to protect us or defend our bodies against foreign elements that might be deemed to be harmful. Now, the immune system, through a series of complicated reactions, would then produce the antibodies, and then some of these reactions will be recorded in some of the cells to make sure that when next you encounter that particular organism, your body recognizes it as something that it knows how to fight. And there's the importance of the immune system. Now, you can either kill the virus or weaken it, and then newer technology where you take a chemical that mimics the blueprint of that particular organism or antigen, and then it forces the immune system into a reaction which is normal. Now, there are diseases that you find that a person's immune system could be triggered even against things that are not harmful. We've got a group of diseases that we call autoimmune, meaning as if the body is reacting against its own processes. Yes. Conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, for example. So the issue of an immune system that reacts to a suspected attack is not an abnormal process. And some of us would have varying levels of reaction. Some would have a harsher reaction. Some would have very mild reaction, etc., depending on how your chemical processes work. Yeah.
So the idea that, why mimic the thing? Because your immune system has got its natural way of detecting these things and fighting them off. Are you not making your immune system lazy? For example, you're weakening its natural ability to detect disease by this mimicking via a vaccine.
So, let's look at the facts. We've got millions of people who have succumbed to this virus. So if we sit and not do anything and wait for the immune system to attack it, we're going to lose a lot more lives. Now, vaccination technology is not new. South Africans, all of us have got a stamp on our left arm for TB, isn't it? Yeah. We all take our kids religiously from whatever, day 10, 6 weeks, 3 months, 9 months, up to 5.5 years. And that is proven technology, and vaccines have been demonstrated to actually save lives. Now, if you look at data that is coming in right now, last year we're looking at about 3% or so people succumbing to the virus after infection. That has come down. And data that is coming out, I don't know the recent figures for SA, but in the US and in the UK, they are saying about 99% of people who succumb or who are hospitalized as a result of the virus are those who are not vaccinated. And I don't know what stronger message is there to say that the vaccines actually do help. Now, nothing is foolproof. Even your paracetamol, for example, that you take, if you take it long enough, several times a day, it actually starts hurting your liver. So almost every chemical that you ingest will have some side effects, but you always have to balance the benefits against the harm.
Dr. Mutudi, loud and clear. I suppose we just have to continue with the message until it finally gets through. I appreciate your time and thank you for coming through this evening. That's Dr. Katlego Mutudi, Board of Healthcare Funders.